I thought my golden retriever was the gentlest soul alive. But the day he finally snapped, I realized I had been ignoring the signs all along. When I first adopted Max, he was the picture of everything I had ever wanted in a dog. A fluffy golden retriever with deep brown eyes and a wagging tail that could light up even the darkest day. I was 25, fresh out of grad school, living in a cozy townhouse on the outskirts of Portland. My parents lived a few hours away, and my circle of friends was scattered across jobs and cities, so Max quickly became more than just a pet. He was my anchor. We built routines together. Morning runs along the tree-lined streets, evenings curled on the couch as he rested his head on my lap, weekends spent exploring hiking trails or farmers markets. Strangers often stopped me to say, "He's such a good boy." And he was obedient, affectionate, patient with children who tugged at his fur, gentle even with the skittish cats that sometimes darted across our path. In those early months, I wore my role as Max's owner like a badge of honor. I signed us up for obedience classes, bought him the best food, even splurged on ridiculous bow ties that made him look like a canine gentleman. My Instagram feed was flooded with photos. Max at the beach, Max playing fetch, Max sleeping belly up in the sun. Friends commented, "You're living the dream," and I believed it. At home, the rhythm felt safe, predictable. I worked remotely as a graphic designer, so Max was never alone for long. I glance across the room during video calls and see him sprawled on his bed, snoring softly, his chest rising and falling with the kind of peace I craved in my own chaotic mind. But looking back, there were cracks in that picture-perfect stability. Cracks I brushed off as quirks. Sometimes, Max would stiffen when a neighbor jogged past our fence, his ears pricked, his body taut. I'd laugh it off, guard dog mode activated, and toss him a treat. When the mailman came, Max barked furiously, pressing his nose against the window as if the intrusion was personal. Again, I excused it. All dogs bark, I told myself. There were other moments too. Subtle, fleeting. He once growled when a stranger leaned too close to me at the park. Another time, he refused to let my landlord's son pet him, pulling back with a sharp bark. Friends teased me, "Maybe he's protective of you." I smiled and agreed, secretly flattered that Max cared so much. The truth. I didn't want to admit that his protectiveness sometimes felt like possession. I had woven Max so tightly into my life that I couldn't imagine questioning him. To me, he was flawless. To me, he was family. So when people asked if I ever worried about living alone, I always gave the same answer. No. I have Max. And for a long time, that felt like enough. The evenings were my favorite. I'd pour a glass of wine, open my sketchbook, and let the pencil glide across the page while Max curled against me. His warmth, his steady breathing, the weight of his head on my thigh, it grounded me. I told myself that as long as Max was there, I'd be safe. I didn't see the storm building beneath that calm. I didn't realize that the stability I clung to was only an illusion. Because the day Max finally snapped was the day my perfect world shattered, and nothing would ever be the same again. The first warning bell didn't come in a dramatic moment. It wasn't fangs bared or a vicious snarl. It was quieter, subtler, easy to explain away, which is why I did. It happened on a Saturday afternoon in late spring. I'd invited my friend Jenna over. She and I had been close since college, and she adored dogs, so naturally, she wanted to meet Max. I was excited for them to bond, eager to show off how friendly and gentle he was. At first, it went exactly as expected. Jenna walked in, crouched down, and cooed, "Oh, he's beautiful." Max sniffed her hand, wagged his tail, and even leaned into her scratches behind the ears. Jenna laughed. "He's perfect, Rachel. You really lucked out." We settled into the living room, chatting over iced coffee while Max sprawled nearby, his tail thumping lazily on the carpet. Everything felt normal, until Jenna stood to grab her phone charger from her bag. Max's head *T up. His ears flattened, and a low growl rumbled in his chest. Jenna froze, her hand halfway to her purse. Is he okay?" I forced a laugh, my heart thudding. "Yeah, he's fine. He just gets protective sometimes." "Protective," Jenna echoed, slowly lowering back onto the couch. Max's growl faded, but his eyes stayed locked on her, unblinking. I reached down to stroke his head, whispering, "It's okay, buddy. She's a friend." He licked my hand and relaxed, but the tension in the room lingered. After Jenna left, she texted me, "He's sweet, but that was a little scary." Has he done that before? I stared at her message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I wanted to type no, never, but flashes of memory betrayed me. The mailman, the landlord's son, that guy at the park. I typed back, "He's just protective. Nothing to worry about." But a seed of unease had been planted. Over the next few weeks, the pattern repeated. When my neighbor stopped to chat by the fence, Max barked so ferociously that she stepped back, her eyes wide. When a delivery driver approached, Max lunged at the window hard enough to rattle the glass. Each time, I soothed him, excused him, convinced myself he was just being a loyal guardian. Then came the night that should have made me pay closer attention. I was on a video call with my parents, laughing as I told them about a new client at work, when Max suddenly stiffened beside me. His body went rigid, his ears back. Before I could react, he leapt off the couch and planted himself in front of the door, barking with a ferocity I had never heard before. I muted the call, my pulse racing, and peeked through the peephole. Nothing. The hallway was empty. No footsteps, no shadows. "Max," I whispered, tugging at his collar. "There's no one there." But he wouldn't move. He growled, low and guttural, as though he sensed something I couldn't. It took 10 minutes, and a handful of treats, before he finally retreated, pacing restlessly around the apartment. When I unmuted the call, my mom frowned. "Is everything okay? What was that?" "Just Max being Max," I said, forcing a smile. That night, I lay awake long after the lights were out, listening to his restless movements in the dark. Every creak of the building, every gust of wind outside, set him off. His growls seeped into my dreams, leaving me unsettled even in sleep. I told myself it was just a phase. Dogs go through behavioral shifts. Maybe he needed more exercise, more stimulation. I searched forums, reading post after post from owners who said, "Don't worry, it's normal for dogs to guard their territory." But deep down, I couldn't ignore the truth. Max wasn't just guarding territory. He was guarding me. And the line between protection and possession was beginning to blur. That was the first true warning bell. And though I heard it loud and clear, I convinced myself it was just background noise. By early summer, Max's behavior was no longer something I could brush off with nervous laughter. It wasn't just the occasional growl or bark, it was constant vigilance, a simmering tension that never seemed to leave his body. And in turn, it never left mine. Every sound outside the apartment, footsteps in the hallway, the squeak of the elevator doors, even the hum of the neighbor's vacuum, set him off. His hackles would rise, his body stiff, as though he were preparing for a fight only he could see. At first, I adjusted my life around him. If I knew a delivery was coming, I put Max in the bedroom so he wouldn't terrify the driver. If friends wanted to visit, I made excuses. "Work's crazy right now," I'd text, or "Sorry, Max is sick." Truthfully, I just didn't trust how he'd react to anyone stepping into our space. The isolation crept up on me slowly. Jenna stopped asking to hang out. My coworkers, who once invited me to happy hours, eventually stopped including me after too many polite refusals. Even my parents noticed. "We hardly see you anymore," my mom said one Sunday over the phone. I blamed deadlines, but in reality, I couldn't face the risk of bringing Max around them. The worst moments were when his protectiveness turned inward, directed at me. One evening, I was folding laundry while Max chewed on his rope toy. Absent-mindedly, I reached down to move his paw off a clean shirt. He froze, his teeth clamped around the rope, his eyes locking onto mine. A low growl vibrated from his throat. "Max," I whispered, my hand trembling as I pulled back. "It's okay." He blinked, licked my hand, and wagged his tail as if nothing had happened. But my heart didn't stop racing for an hour. After that, I started second-guessing every interaction. Could I pet him when he was eating? Was it safe to move him if he blocked the hallway? What if he growled again, and this time didn't stop? The apartment, once my sanctuary, became a place of quiet tension. I walked on eggshells, adjusting my movements to avoid triggering him. And the outside world began to shrink too. One Saturday morning, I tried taking him to the park, desperate for fresh air and a reminder of the carefree days we used to share. At first, he trotted happily beside me, tail wagging. But when a little boy ran past chasing a soccer ball, Max lunged so violently that I nearly lost my grip on the leash. The boy's mother screamed, yanking her son away. "Control your dog," she shouted, fear etched across her face. "I'm so sorry," I stammered, dragging Max back. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the leash. We didn't stay at the park. We didn't go back again after that. That night, I sat on the bathroom floor, head in my hands, listening to Max pacing restlessly outside the door. Tears burned my eyes as I whispered to myself, "What's happening to us?" Because it wasn't just Max changing, it was me. I stopped inviting people over. I stopped going out unless absolutely necessary. My phone buzzed with unanswered messages, and the world outside my apartment grew smaller and smaller. It was just me and Max. Always Max. And though I loved him with every fiber of my being, a quiet fear began gnawing at the edges of that love. What if the dog I trusted more than anyone else wasn't safe anymore? What if the loyalty I'd built my life around was slowly unraveling into something dangerous? The pressure kept rising, isolating me from friends, family, and the life I once knew. And deep down, I knew something was building, something inevitable. I just didn't know when it would snap. It was a humid July evening when everything shifted from uneasy tension to undeniable fear. I had just finished a long day of work, the kind that leaves you drained and grateful for routine. Max was curled up by the window, his ears twitching as cicadas buzzed outside. I poured myself a glass of water, already picturing a quiet evening sketching while Max dozed at my feet. But then my phone buzzed with a text from my landlord. "Need to stop by and check the AC unit. Should only take a minute." Normally, I would have rescheduled, anything to avoid someone entering Max's territory. But the heat was unbearable, and the AC had been sputtering for weeks. So I texted back, "Okay, come by now." When the knock came, Max exploded into barking. His body slammed against the door, teeth bared, eyes wild. I grabbed his collar, heart pounding. "It's okay, buddy. It's just Mr. Collins." But he wasn't listening. His body vibrated with tension, muscles coiled like springs. I cracked the door open, holding Max back with all my strength. Mr. Collins, a graying man in his 60s, stepped inside with a friendly smile. "Evening, Rachel. Won't take long." He didn't get to finish. Max lunged. If I hadn't been holding his collar, he would have launched straight at him. As it was, the force nearly yanked me off my feet. I screamed, pulling back with everything I had. Mr. Collins stumbled, his eyes wide with shock. "Good God," he gasped. "That dog wants to K***LL me." No, he's just startled." I insisted, dragging Max toward the bedroom. My arms ached, my voice hoarse. I shoved him inside and slammed the door, his furious barking muffled but relentless. When I turned back, Mr. Collins was pale, gripping the doorframe. "Rachel, that's not just barking. That's dangerous. You need to do something about him." I nodded frantically, apologizing over and over until he finally shook his head and left, muttering, "One day, he's going to hurt someone." When the door clicked shut, I collapsed against it, tears streaming down my face. Max's barking slowly subsided into whines, and then silence. That night, I sat cross-legged on the floor outside the bedroom, listening to him shift and sigh on the other side of the door. My mind replayed the scene in endless loops, his bared teeth, the raw force of his body, the terror in Mr. Collins's eyes. And for the first time, I admitted the thought I had been running from. Max wasn't just protective. He was unpredictable. The next day, desperate for answers, I called a canine behaviorist. I explained everything. His growling, his lunging, his escalating aggression. She listened quietly before saying, "Rachel, what you're describing sounds like a dog under immense stress. He may see threats everywhere, even when they're not real. It's not uncommon in deeply bonded dogs, but it can become dangerous if not addressed." "Dangerous how?" I whispered. "Dogs in that state can snap," she said gently. "Even at the people they love most." Her words hung heavy in the air. I thanked her, my hands trembling as I ended the call. That evening, I opened Max's bedroom door. He bounded out, tail wagging, licking my hands as if nothing had happened. His eyes were soft, trusting, full of the love I had always known. But when I looked at him, I didn't just see my loyal companion. I saw the dog who had nearly attacked my landlord. I saw the growls, the lunges, the moments of tension that were stacking higher and higher. And then another thought pierced through me, cold and sharp. If he could snap at Mr. Collins, what would stop him from snapping at me? I woke up the next morning with my stomach in knots. The memory of Max lunging at Mr. Collins looped through my mind like a broken record, every detail sharper than the last. The guttural growl, the snap of his jaws, the sheer force in his body. I loved him with everything in me, but now, for the first time, I was afraid of him. Fear wasn't something I ever expected to feel toward Max. He was my shadow, my protector, my comfort. But fear is a dangerous seed. Once planted, it grows fast. I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. So I decided to fight back, not against Max, but against the darkness creeping into our lives. The first step was training. Real, professional training, not the YouTube tutorials I had tried before. I called the canine behaviorist again. Her name was Dr. Lillian Carr, and begged for an emergency consultation. She arrived that afternoon, a calm woman in her 40s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Max greeted her with suspicion, his hackles rising, a low rumble in his throat. "Don't scold him," Dr. Carr instructed as I instinctively started to hush him. "He's not misbehaving, he's communicating fear." Fear. That word hit me harder than I expected. Because wasn't that exactly what I felt too? She observed him for an hour, giving quiet instructions. Step back, let him approach, reward calm behavior. Max improved slightly, sniffing her hand, taking a treat, but his body never truly relaxed. When she left, she handed me a folder thick with notes. "You need to make decisions soon," she said carefully. "Dogs like Max can either be rehabilitated with intense work, or they can become dangerous liabilities. You must prepare for both outcomes." Both outcomes. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her words echoing. My phone buzzed with messages from friends inviting me out, but I ignored them. I couldn't leave Max alone, not when every moment with him felt like walking on a knife's edge. The next few days became a battleground. Every walk, every interaction was a test. When a jogger passed too close, Max lunged, nearly yanking the leash from my hands. At the vet's office, he bared his teeth at the assistant, sending her stumbling back in fear. My arms were covered in bruises from holding him back, my nerves shredded from constant vigilance. But I refused to give up. I doubled down on training. I rearranged my schedule, canceled social plans, even took unpaid leave from work to focus on him. Every day was drills. Sit, stay, reward, exposure to strangers, controlled desensitization. Sometimes I saw glimmers of hope, moments where Max softened, where his eyes met mine with the old warmth, and I felt like we were winning. But then, just as quickly, he'd regress. One evening, I invited a neighbor over to help with socialization. The moment she stepped inside, Max went rigid. His body tensed, his lips curled back, and before I could react, he lunged so violently the leash slipped from my fingers. He didn't bite her, thank God, but he knocked over a chair, sending it crashing against the wall. My neighbor fled, pale and shaken, muttering, "Rachel, he's not safe. He's going to hurt someone." Her words sliced through me. I sat on the floor afterward, Max panting beside me, tail wagging like he had just defended me from a monster. I buried my face in my hands, sobbing. He didn't see himself as a threat. In his mind, he was saving me. But in reality, he was tearing my life apart piece by piece. That was when the second battle began, not just with Max, but with everyone around me. Mr. Collins filed a complaint with the landlord, warning that my dog was a dangerous menace. My landlord threatened eviction if I didn't handle it. Friends stopped visiting. Family members called, telling me to just get rid of him before he *LS someone. But how do you give up on someone who has been your everything? How do you abandon the creature who has slept at your feet, guarded your door, licked your tears away on nights you thought you wouldn't survive? I couldn't. Not yet. So I fought harder. I bought reinforced harnesses, installed baby gates, and even reinforced my doors. My apartment slowly transformed into a fortress, designed not to keep intruders out, but to keep Max in. I was exhausted, beaten down, and isolated, but I wasn't ready to surrender. And yet, deep inside, a chilling question kept whispering louder each day. Was I saving Max? Or was I just delaying the inevitable snap? The breaking point came on a stormy night in late August. The The rain lashed against the windows, thunder rattled the glass panes, and lightning illuminated the living room in sharp, jagged flashes. Max hated storms. They turned him into something raw, something primal. Usually, I calmed him with gentle strokes, whispered words, and the comfort of my presence. But that night, nothing worked. He paced endlessly, nails clicking against the hardwood floor, hackles raised, ears pinned back. Each crack of thunder made him whip his head toward the door, as if an enemy was about to burst inside. His breathing was harsh, rapid, like a runner at the end of a marathon. I knelt beside him, holding out my hand. Max, it's just a storm, baby. You're okay. But his eyes, God, his eyes, were not the eyes of my sweet companion. They were wild, feverish, pupils blown wide. Then the knock came. 3 heavy raps against the door. My landlord again, stopping by to warn me about repairs. He always picked the worst times. I barely had a chance to move before Max lunged, this time slipping free of the leash I'd clipped to his harness as a precaution. The door swung open. Mr. Collins stepped in, muttering, "Rachel, we need to." He never finished. Max launched himself across the room, a streak of golden fury. His teeth bared, saliva flying, a growl ripping from his throat so deep it shook my bones. "Max!" I screamed, diving forward, grabbing for his harness. My hands barely closed around the strap before he collided with Mr. Collins. They crashed into the hallway wall, Mr. Collins's cry of terror echoing through the stairwell. For a terrifying second, I thought Max was going to bite him. His jaws snapped inches from the man's throat, his body vibrating with rage. I yanked with every ounce of strength I had, my arms screaming in protest, my knees slamming into the floor. Neighbors burst from their apartments, gasping at the scene, me, dragging my snarling dog away from a trembling old man. "Rachel, for God's sake," one shouted. "That animal is dangerous." The words cut deeper than any knife, because I knew, in that moment, they weren't wrong. With one final desperate heave, I pulled Max back inside and slammed the door. He whirled on me, teeth still bared, eyes burning. For one horrifying moment, I thought he might turn that fury on me. But then, just as suddenly, it was gone. He collapsed onto the floor, panting heavily, his body shaking. He laid his head on his paws, looking up at me with those familiar, soft eyes. As if nothing had happened. I sank to the ground across from him, chest heaving, tears streaming down my face. My neighbors shouted through the door, their voices full of fear and anger, but all I could hear was the thunder of my own heartbeat. I realized then that this couldn't continue. I couldn't keep defending him. I couldn't keep building walls higher and higher, pretending we were safe inside. Because we weren't. The next day, I made the hardest call of my life. I rang Dr. Carr, my voice breaking as I told her everything. The attack, the neighbors, the fear. She was silent for a long time before saying softly, "Rachel, sometimes love means recognizing when we're not enough. Sometimes it means letting go." The words shattered me. But deep down, I knew she was right. That evening, I packed Max's favorite toy, his blanket, and the collar I had bought when he was just a fluffy puppy who fit in my arms. Then I drove him to a specialized rehabilitation center, a place that worked with high-risk dogs. They promised to try to help him, try to retrain him, try to save him. When I handed over his leash, Max pressed against my legs, whining softly. He didn't understand. To him, I was his whole world. And he was mine. I kissed his head, burying my face in his fur one last time. "I love you, Max. Always." As I led him away, his tail wagged faintly, his eyes never leaving mine until the door closed between us. I stumbled back to my car, broken. The rain had stopped, but inside me, the storm still raged. And for the first time, I truly faced the truth I had been running from all along. My golden retriever had finally snapped. The apartment was too quiet without Max. For the first few days, I kept expecting to hear the rhythmic thump of his tail against the floor or the soft jingling of his collar as he padded toward me. Instead, silence stretched across every room, oppressive and heavy. I wandered from corner to corner, catching myself glancing at the door like he'd come bounding in at any moment. But he didn't. He never would again. My neighbors avoided me in the hallway. Mr. Collins filed another complaint, though this time his words were edged with sympathy. "You did the right thing," he told me, but his eyes lingered with a mixture of relief and judgment. To them, Max was a monster narrowly avoided. To me, he was still the puppy who had slept beside me during college finals, who had barked at shadows when I cried, who had once been my only family. The rehabilitation center sent weekly updates. At first, the reports were bleak. Max remained on edge, unpredictable, aggressive with strangers. My heart sank each time I read the words, but I clung to hope like a lifeline. Maybe, just maybe, someone with more skill, more patience, more strength than me could help him. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, the reports shifted. Responded well to structured training. Showed signs of relaxation around familiar staff. Beginning to trust again. Each line was a flicker of light in the darkness. Still, at night, guilt gnawed at me. I replayed every choice, every missed warning, every time I had told myself, he's just protective, every denial. Had I failed him? Had my love blinded me so much that I had let him suffer in silence until he broke? Therapy became my refuge. Dr. Carr referred me to a grief counselor who specialized in pet loss. She explained what my heart resisted. "You didn't abandon Max, Rachel. You gave him a chance he wouldn't have had otherwise. And you saved yourself too." It took months before I believed her. One rainy Saturday, I visited the center. Max had been there nearly half a year. They brought him out to the yard, and for a heartbeat, I saw my dog again. His ears perked, his eyes softened, and his tail wagged. He didn't lunge, didn't growl. He simply walked toward me, cautious but calm. I knelt, tears streaming down my cheeks as I whispered, "Hey, buddy." He sniffed my hands, leaned into my touch, and for a moment, the world was whole again. Then the trainer called him back, and he obeyed, glancing over his shoulder once as if to say goodbye. I left knowing that even if Max never came home, he was in a place where healing was possible. Life slowly rebuilt itself. I returned to work, reconnected with friends, started jogging again without the constant tug of a leash. The emptiness in the apartment never fully disappeared, but it became less suffocating. I filled the space with plants, sketches, and soft music. One evening, I lit a candle and pulled out Max's old collar. I held it in my hands, the metal tag warm from my grip. "You saved me in ways you'll never understand," I whispered. "And even when you snapped, you were still mine." My story with Max wasn't the fairy tale I had once imagined. It was messy, painful, and heartbreaking, but it was real. And it taught me that love isn't just about holding on, it's about knowing when to let go. Today, when people ask about Max, I don't say, "He turned dangerous." I say, "He was the dog who taught me the hardest lesson about love." And when I walk past the park where we once played fetch, I smile through the ache, grateful for every moment, even the ones that broke me. Because in the end, the truth is simple. The day my golden retriever finally snapped, I lost the dog I once knew, but I found the strength to save us both.